This episode contains topics that may be sensitive to some listeners. Check out the show notes for more information. Thank you for tuning in.
Time, weather, and...
We interrupt our regular program with breaking news. At high sun, there was another explosion in the copper mines, followed by an earthquake. It caused little damage, but was felt all the way to the new Vilirth port in the south. The epicenter is about a bell's drive from the city. Mount Spinell, a stratovolcano, occasionally causes earthquakes as a result of volcanic activity. However, scientists have confirmed this is not the case. The volcano has been quiet for the past 2 years. At this time, we are unsure of any casualties. Several reports say there are miners stuck in one of the mine shafts, but we have not been able to confirm these claims. Our reporter has tried to get in contact with the Van Lerkhof Mining Corporation. They have thus far declined to comment. The cause of these explosions, although still unknown, might be linked. Where human error was first implied, people have started looking at the Van Lerkhof Corporation for answers. Stay tuned for more information. This was Karina Sevelin with an extra news flash.
There's a rot in the heart of this city.
The new Vilirth Metropolitan warns about the dangers of a new drug overtaking the streets.
The government launched a campaign against the use of neomorphic memories.
This city's nothing but copper and visions of the past.
It's a black day. For all of us.
Who doesn't dream of the times gone by?
Unsavory figures can no longer hide in the shadows.
Such is my promise.
Wake Up New Vilirth. Chapter 5. Ill news spreads apace. My screwdriver clattered to the floor. At the same time, a low rumble went through my body. My mug smashed into pieces. In a single move, I slid under the workbench. The shelves above me were stocked with loose objects. They rattled in the same rhythm as my pounding heart. I waited, my breath trapped in my lungs. I could see a sliver of the window which showed me the street outside. Well, technically not the outside. I was still underground. I didn't see anyone running or hear any shouting. A few years ago, a tsunami followed an earthquake. It took minutes for the wave to reach the coast. And after that, even longer for people to notice the underground was drowning. I turned the sound of my transmitter up to listen for evacuation messages. The device was embedded in my prosthetic arm. Useful, since I tended to forget everything that wasn't attached to my body. The speaker, however, was terrible. I'd need to do something about that. No more shock seemed to be coming, but I remained sitting under the workbench for several more minutes, just in case. I'd hate it if the battery pack I'd stored on top of the shelves came crashing down on me. Perhaps I need to find another place for that. When the underground public announcement system announced 12 bells, I curled out from underneath the table. I glanced outside where people did the same. A man ducked out from under his market stall, shook off the dust, and continued his chant that had been ringing through the workshop all day, trying to lure customers. I looked down at the floor, where my favorite mug now lay in pieces. The mug already had a chip in the rim, but I'd carried it around for years. It was a stupid thing to be attached to. There'd been a text on it that I'd never been able to read because it had long since flaked off. On all accounts, it was ugly and grimy, with oil-stained fingerprinted on the porcelain. But it had been Dad's. At least the shards were big. I took an empty cardboard box and gathered all of them from the workshop floor. I'd fix it later. I turned off my transmitter and instead turned on the radio standing on the dusty shelves. Instantly, crackling music filled the small space, but no news. Keeping my ear peaked, I returned to the project. I was trying to fix a radio for my uncle's supervisor. I had taught myself to fix anything that had wiring. At first, it was out of necessity. I could try to fix my prosthetic myself, or not walk. The prices for new prosthetics, or even getting them fixed properly, were far beyond the pay grade of anyone living in the underground. Slowly, my necessity had turned into an interest, and then into work. It didn't earn much, mostly because I barely asked anything if it came to families from the underground, but it paid the bills well enough. I wish it also chipped away at the mounting debts caused by my amputation surgery, but inflation rose faster than I could pay it off. When Willow, a loyal customer of mine because she somehow managed to break her hover every month, had proposed the memory hunt, I didn't have to think for long. Usually my motto was, the smaller the device, the better. Yet for monetary reasons, I started to branch into larger things, such as cars and hovers.
Are you okay?
A cloud of dust followed Willow inside. She was covering her mouth with a shawl. Yeah, you? I didn't look up from the circuit board. It should make sense why the thing wasn't working, but it didn't. Most likely it was sand. The answer or problem was always sand. Do you know what happened?
No. There's no tsunami warning, though. I checked.
I turned up my radio, but it was still playing songs. There wouldn't be another news break until full bell. What are you here for?
Well, I'm picking you up for a job. Rhea sent me.
Her lips curled into a scowl. I glanced at the project in front of me. I hadn't yet figured out what was wrong with it, so chances were I'd still need a few bells to find and solve the problem.
It pays well.
I set my screwdriver on the workbench. Okay, give me a second. I wiped my hands on my overalls. They came back dirtier than they had been, grime now clinging to both my fingers and palms. Do I need to be clean?
How fast can you change? 'Cause it's rather spiffy.
Give me 5.
Oh, just 5? I'll wait outside.
Although I doubted I could meet the spiffy standard, I nodded and opened a door in the back of the garage. I stepped into a cramped hallway that led into my aunt and uncle's home. I pushed into the kitchen expecting to find my aunt, but it was empty. Auntie? Auntie Shinna? I realized she was probably working. I had lost track of time. My uncle and cousin would be in the mines, which hopefully meant they were far enough from the earthquake. Wouldn't be the first time the earthquakes had caused caves to collapse. I had no way to ask, as my transmitter wouldn't reach them until they were outside after their shift. I bent over to pick up a few of the fallen items and set them back on the shelves. A vase had smashed into pieces. I swept it onto a dustpan and set it on the counter. I walked into a small room that was basically a continuation from my uncle's workplace. My room. It barely fit a bed, and still I had managed to fit anything useful I could gather from broken devices into boxes across shelving on the wall. It varied from lights to rare mechanisms to small speakers or sensors to tons of different wiring. Everything came in use at some point. I knelt over a set of drawers that functioned as my wardrobe. I didn't own anything fancy, so I put on black to hide the stains. I made sure to lock the doors behind me before heading over to where Willow's hover was parked. At this point, barely anything in that hover was original anymore. It was a smaller model than the cargo hover we had used on the hunt. A 42 Wiesmann Meander in standard grey. Except for the left door, which I had replaced with a blue one I'd found at the dump. It had taken us well, mostly me, some time to get the thing up and running again after it hadn't been used in 5 moonspans. It hadn't helped that someone had stolen the batteries as the hover sat in storage. I slid into the passenger side, with effort. My bad leg wasn't as flexible to begin with. The prosthetic stopped just under my knee, and my real knee wasn't in great shape. But I dared to argue that my bad leg wasn't the problem this time. Even with my small stature, I could only just sit comfortably. It was one of the reasons we hadn't taken this hover on our trip. I forgot how small this thing is. Willow looked me over.
We'll go past my place. You can borrow something from me.
What?
Your clothes.
I was talking about your hover.
Oh, well, you'll still need to change into something presentable. This won't fool anyone.
Thanks. The offer still stands to rip out the chair and move it backwards, or to rip out the dashboard.
I like it like this.
Willow slid into her chair with ease, although her knees almost touched the steering wheel. She patted the dashboard.
She's already been through enough. Poor girl.
Willow started the hover and turned onto the empty train tracks, heading into a dark tunnel southwards. Is this really necessary?
Yes.
I glanced down at the black dress Willow had put me in. I tugged at the hat so it didn't cover half my face.
It's supposed to be lopsided. It's fashion.
Willow leaned across the hover and pulled one side down again. If you say so. What kind of job is it? I tried to shove my metal leg under the protruding dashboard and was unsuccessful. My knee was starting to hurt.
Basically bodyguard work. Rhea's exact words. That's all I know.
Basically. Sounds ominous. I watched outside as the city flashed past. Underground Vilirth was fragmented. They'd used the unfinished subway to build a city safe from the dust and heat, and used every part of the system for it. But that involved a lot of improvising. Although this, what would have been the central station, was the bulk of the city center, small neighborhoods kept popping up in the different stations throughout the city. The roof of Central Station rose up from the ground by a few meters. Under the glass dome was one of the few places in the underground where natural light still came in. Like most places, most of the glass had been boarded up against the brutal sun. The plaza outside, imagined to be a cultural hub, was now no more than an empty square where, on good days, markets were held in an attempt to enjoy a bit of the outside world. Willow and I sometimes indulged, and came up to the plaza at the end of the day when the storms didn't rage and the sun wasn't as relentless. Rhea called us crazy every time we recalled it during long days in the hover, saying it was something weird humans did. Strange creatures, in Rhea's words.
All right. We'll be doing the last bit on foot.
She parked the hover behind a large building that consisted of different living pods, stacked together into one flat. The structure had been built during Vilirth's rebranding to New Vilirth. A similar building had been promised to my family. The concept behind the pods was modularity. When more people came, more pods could be built and added to the building. Every pod would house a single family, but larger families could buy several pods close to each other to enjoy a modern, modular apartment. I looked through one of the circular windows into one of the pods. It was barely larger than our cargo hover. The interior was gray, dilapidated, and the pod hung slanted, held up by thick cables and studs. I pulled my gaze away when I saw someone move behind the window. I peeled myself out of the hover, stretching my good leg and rolling back my shoulders. Rhea is right to walk.
No one is forcing you to use the hover.
Willow rolled her eyes. She walked off and disappeared behind the pod building into a small alleyway. I rushed to follow her. My left leg burned as the blood started flowing back into it.
Job simple. We keep an ear out. Ulva wants information.
For the occasion, Rhea had put on a dress. She had slicked her hair into elegant waves. I hadn't seen Rhea like this before. We'd spent moons with long stretches between showers or other amenities. But I guess this was what Rhea often looked like, the heir of the Oneiroi Vanguard Empire. Though technically that was no longer true. Willow had changed into a dress too. Came the most natural to her. She could morph into anything she wanted with ease, and now she was a wealthy merchant's daughter. I picked at my own dress. Anyone who looked at me could immediately tell that I was a fraud. Willow slapped my hand away.
Stop doing that and stand straight.
Yes, Mom.
There shouldn't be any trouble. Did you bring your guns?
No.
Of course.
Wait, what?
Good. Don't worry, you won't need them. Just a precaution.
I didn't like the sound of that. Sure, we'd been carrying guns all those moons out on the road, but they had been meant to shoot whatever monsters we came across. And we had shot monsters. Not people.
Here.
Willow pressed a handgun into my hand. The metal was warm and heavy. I checked twice to be sure the safety was still on before putting the gun away. I followed Rhea and Willow to a building front. Looked like any regular apartment down here, but that was most likely the point. We turned up a set of stairs that at first looked like nothing special, until we came around the third bend and stepped onto the carpet. At the top of the stairs was a door that didn't seem to belong in this grey apartment block at all, made from solid wood with intricate carvings. 2 bouncers stood before it.
We have a reservation.
She held out a card. The bouncer nodded and opened the door to let us through. I had never been in an establishment like this. The lights were dim, but they didn't hide the riches of the fabrics, crystal chandeliers, and patrons. Everywhere stood round booths that promised the customers complete privacy. How were we going to listen in on any conversations? This place was made for the freedom to talk without people eavesdropping. We were led past a booth with Dokalfar lounging in their seats, connected with thin tubes to clear bottles behind them. The system was sleek, perfectly modular. I stood for a moment, watching an employee fit in a new bottle of clear liquid. It slid behind the customer on a soundless rail. I finally realized what it was.
This is a memory club. These people choose it, Lou. No use in feeling sorry for them.
Of course I knew, but it still felt strange. The very memories we had hunted likely hung in the walls here. I looked again at the Dokalfar, slumped in their seats, their eyes glazed over. Except one, standing out in a group with his bright white hair. His eyes locked on us for a second as we walked past. I quickened my pace to catch up with Willow and Rhea, who didn't seem at all fazed by this place, or at least pretended not to. We slid into our appointed booth.
Did you feel the earthquake earlier?
She scanned our surroundings.
It's hard to miss.
How can I help you?
What seemed to be a combination between a nurse and a waitress appeared at the table. Willow couldn't hide the distaste from her face.
The costume isn't accurate.
I'd like a beer. I tried to hide Willow's words.
No.
Willow snapped back into her role.
We'd each like a cup of herbata served with a shot of moonshine.
Willow threw me a stern look as the waitress left.
They don't serve beer here.
How should I know? I fought the urge to slump into my seat, knowing that that too would be criticized by Willow. Our job in the desert began to look more and more like a breeze. Rhea was right. We didn't need our guns. In fact, I should have brought a game. The most boring 4 bells followed. Rhea wasn't a conversationalist, and Willow stopped trying to get something going after half a bell persistently bringing up new subjects. Eventually, we lapsed into silence and waited.
Did Ulva say there would be an important meeting here?
Mm-hmm.
I bet you she was lying. She's punishing you with the torture of boredom.
Maybe it got rescheduled?
We interrupt our regular program with breaking news. At high sun, there was another explosion in the copper mines, followed by an earthquake. It caused little damage, but was felt all the way to the new Vilirth port in the south. The epicenter is about a bell's drive from the city. Mount Spinel, a stratovolcano, occasionally causes earthquakes as a result of volcanic activity. However, scientists have confirmed this is not the case. The volcano has been quiet for the past 2 years. At this time, we are unsure of any casualties. Several reports say there are miners stuck in one of the mine shafts, but
I jumped up. My joints protested, pressing against the inside of my prosthetic.
Aren't your uncle and cousin?
Yeah, they're working today. I gestured at Willow to be quiet. My heart started to race.
People have started looking at the Von Nerkhoff Corporation for answers. Stay tuned for more information. This was Karina Sevelin with an extra news flash.
I need to go.
We're not done here, Tuula.
I'm sorry. I wasn't listening. I walked towards the door. I pushed past the security guard.
Hey, ladies! You okay?
He called after me, but I continued, quickening my pace. I misstepped on the carpet. My prosthetic foot slammed down on an angle. Only the railing stopped me from tumbling down the stairs. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I continued on. The words from the radio echoed through my head. It had happened again. My uncle's friend had lost his son in the second collapse. What if it was my uncle or cousin this time? While I ran, I tried to call him with my transmitter. It didn't reach him. I left the alley and passed the phone booth. I backtracked. I dug up a copper coin from inside my boot and slid it into the phone. I dialed the number. I tapped the metal as it rang. A minute. 2. 3. That's when my coin ran out. I hadn't expected my aunt to be home or to have any answers, yet I had clung to that tether. My aunt always knew everything. I slammed the phone back on the receiver and continued on. The hover came into view. I pried the door open, the lock no longer worked, and clambered in. It remained as uncomfortably cramped as ever. I ducked under the dashboard. These older models didn't need a key if you knew what to do. It took a few minutes, but when I managed to connect the right wires, the hover rumbled to a start.
Yes!
Even with working air conditioning, the hover turned into a sauna almost instantly after coming out of the underground and into Upper Vilirth. It was strange getting used to it again after being underground all the time. If I hadn't been in a hurry, I might have been able to enjoy a bit of sunlight.
Let's go.
I turned on the radio.
Midnight with Matt and Nathan. Yeah!
Never do that again. Sorry. As you can tell, we're new to this. That was supposed to be Matt announcing our next game.
Reimagine your limits with Bolt Power Drink. Sugar-free without any artificial additives. Bolt comes in 2 delicious flavors, sour seaweed and acidic apple. Bolt, light your ideas. To turn on the lights of our city, we need coal. And for coal, we need you. Providing a better life for millions of Vilirthians is an important task. Become a miner today.
I turned the radio off. I left the city behind and hovered above the road that led to the mines. The dust cloud was the first sign of what had gone awry. The row of cars standing in traffic was the second. Instead of settling behind the row of cars, I turned off the solid road and onto the sand. People spilled out of the cars, some stuffed together in the vehicles with up to 10 people. These weren't officials coming to assess the damage, although there were some crisp black vehicles stuck between the clunkers. These were the families of the miners. I even recognized a car I was sure I'd worked on. I clamped my teeth together and set on. I entered the dust cloud at its fading edges. I'd never been to the mines. When the last collapse happened, my aunt had stopped me from leaving and made me wait. Those had been excruciating bells as we sat huddled together on the couch until the door opened. I was not going to wait for news now. The heat hit me when I jumped out of the hover. The dress swished around me, barring me from running full out. I wound through the cars with the rest of the crowd. These were people I recognized, not because I knew them, but because they looked like me. They too had come from the north for the promise of more wealth and security in New Vilirth, and then they'd all been dumped in the mines because they were the only ones poor enough to want to do this job.
Hold it!
An officer shouted over the throng. I stood in a line opposite 20 other officers. They held shields, acting as a human barricade against the masses. People hadn't started pushing yet, but they were getting close. I felt it static in the air, the anger and the fear.
What's going on?
Sir, madam, you don't have to ask you all to calm down.
Oh, shut up, you won't answer!
I see it. I said stop it.
Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you not to cross the line. Stay on the perimeter. Respect the
Move along. I said move along.
I stood on my tiptoes, trying to look over the crowd, but I could barely see the tops of the officers' heads. A gap in front of me opened, and I took my chance, slipping between people to get to the front. When I almost tripped over someone's feet, a man pulled me up.
Careful there.
I thanked him with a nod. Any news? He shook his head. With his size, he looked like a mine worker. Why aren't you...
I was rejected.
He held up a prosthetic hand. It was rusted through in spots. I felt my left leg burn where the stump attached to the block of metal. A knowing smile appeared on my face for a second and then faded.
I'm not sure if I'm lucky or not. Your mum? Dad?
I shook my head. Neither. Uncle. And cousin. You?
My son.
We turned to look back at the front of the crowd.
I think they are bringing him out now.
He clutched his jacket and stared ahead. I waited impatiently for him to report back.
There they are.
The row of police broke apart to let through a stream of workers. Families rushed forward to collect their loved ones and check them for injuries. I kept my eyes locked on the slow-moving line. I wished people would move faster. While I wanted people to greet their family, I selfishly hoped they were mine. There! I recognized the dark shock of hair. But when the man turned towards me, it wasn't my uncle. A man rushed to greet him, and I continued looking. The bodies around me hummed with anxiety. How many people were going to come out? I glanced at the hand of the man next to me. It was white around the folds of his jacket. He hadn't spotted his son either. A thick drop of glue dripped over the side of a porcelain shard. I held up the bottom of the broken mug in one hand. That was the only part that had survived. The rest of the mug had split into 6 uneven pieces. Even the handle had cracked into 2. I sat, legs folded, on the floor in front of Willow's coffee table. A thread of guilt had led me away from my aunt to Willow's place.
It isn't your fault, you know.
I know. Somehow, I had imagined I would bring them back home. And I couldn't quite get the man's distraught face from my mind. Hope lingered that perhaps his son had come later, trailing behind. But such optimistic thoughts were foolish. I pressed 2 shards together, waiting for the glue to dry. Willow sat on a threadbare armchair. Or rather lay, draped across both armrests. She held a book, folded backward, its spine completely split. Her blonde hair swung in a ponytail. Hey, I'll leave you some of my glue. I attempted to steer the conversation away from the mines. Willow's dark eyebrows appeared above the pages of her book.
What for?
Your book? Willow rolled her eyes.
Oh, you're such a dad.
It's offensive.
It's a mass-produced paperback.
It was 30 years ago, yes. I let go of the shard. It kept its place. And it's not even yours.
Oh, boo-hoo.
I picked up another shard and glued it onto the base of the mug. Willow watched the process, bemused. We lapsed into silence until the door opened and Rhea came in. Willow had covered the hole with a water-damaged board. I put it on my mental list to truly fix it for her.
That was foolish, Tuula. We were on a job.
I didn't look up, instead focusing on holding the shard pressed against the nearly completed mug.
It's a family, Rhea.
Do you want them to work in the mines forever?
Rhea! They haven't come out.
You're right. It was impulsive.
If you want the money, you need to sit out the jobs.
I slammed the mug down on the table. The shard fell out. You do not need to tell me how to do my work, Rhea. I looked down at my mug and picked up the shard again. My hands trembled. I felt Willow's hand on my shoulder. Rhea laid 2 envelopes on the table. She sat down on the couch behind me.
It's not much. I'll have a few more jobs lined up for next week.
I took one of the envelopes and counted through the coperium. It was barely a week's worth of food. And I had already transferred the money from the memory hunt to pay off part of my debt. In these past 5 moons, the interest rate had gone up even more. If something happened to my uncle or cousin, I couldn't even pay to help them. I swallowed my frustration and stared at my mug. Rhea suddenly shut up.
Who's that?
She looked at Willow.
Who's who? Oh, I don't know. I didn't order anything.
Willow grabbed her gun from the table and walked forward to open the door.
Who are you?
I glanced up. A Dakalfar stood in the doorway. Like Rhea, he barely fit inside the doorframe. He certainly wasn't dressed as if he belonged in the underground. He could have sold his jacket and provided an entire street with food for a moonspan. His white blonde hair disappeared behind the frame, and he would have to duck to come in. I recognized him immediately. It was the Dakalfar from the Dragonfly.
You're von Leerkoff's boy.
My blood ran cold. I slowly got to my feet. I pulled the handgun Willow had given me out of the belt around my waist and weighed it in my hands. My fingers trembled against the metal.
Yes. Konstantin von Leerkoff. Pleased to meet you.
What do you want? My voice came out less steady than I had hoped.
I'm here to propose a deal.
His voice was clear and crisp, clearly trained for political conversation and negotiation.
We don't deal with sort like you. Close the door, Willow.
Gladly.
The anger and fear that was balling up inside of me was ready to explode at the sight of him, von Lirkov. How would his father feel if he went missing?
Time, weather, and pass.
Wake Up New Vilirth is created, produced and written by Lisa van Hees. Directed and co-produced by Iris-sanne van der Aar. Our brilliant team of voices consists of Swaeske Dooper-de Vries as Tuula, Sigrid van Setten as Rhea, Carré Albers as Willow, Liam van Poorten as Konstantin, Fey Lehiane, Lin Schalken, Joris van de Waterbeent, Tom van Hull and Daan Helmendach as our radio hosts, and Reno van Oostrum, Ezra Menard and Isa Marley as our supporting voices. Sound recording by Lisa van Hees and Jonas van Impe. Sound editing by Jonas van Impe. Sound design by Lode Woltersom. Music by Freya Terpstra and Teun Zeidner. Radio design by Joris van de Waterbeent. Directing assistance by Tom van Hull. Production assistance by Demi Oude Elverink, Femke Bruil, Robert Kersies and Isa Marley. Cover art by Matt Roodhuizen. For a full list of our wonderful team, go to wakeupnewvilirth.com. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed your stay.